Hey everyone, Salman here from Wynn Strength, bringing you week 8 of the Average to Savage training program written by Greg Knuckles over at Stronger by Science. Like usual, I'll leave links below for the training program as well as Stronger by Science website. Highly recommend checking out both amazing resources. So week 8 does mark the first week of the new phase. The program is broken up into 3 6-week training cycles, with week 7 and week 14 being deload weeks in between to separate each of the 3 phases. So we did introduce some new exercises this week. We're actually bringing back the back squat, so that's something I've been looking forward to. Last week was a wrap up of the previous 6 weeks, so we didn't show any of the new movements in the previous video, but this week we'll just be showcasing all those new movements. But instead of redoing the movements from the previous 6 weeks in the deload week, I took that as an opportunity to introduce the movements that I haven't done in quite a while, just so I get a little bit of exposure to them with those lighter weight recommendations, as well as trying to making sure that nothing is kind of overlapping with each other with how those movements feel. So we had a couple of iterations from last week to this week. I think day 3 I tried to do too much, so that's getting cut down a lot for the preceding weeks. So we're back squatting again. The big news of the training program for me personally anyway, if you've been following my channel for any significant amount of time, you'll know that I haven't squatted with a regular barbell for quite a while. Just with this program alone, it's been about 14 weeks of squatting with purely the SSB Yoke bar from Elite FTS. Other than that, I've been front squatting and doing some lunges with a regular barbell, but no low bar or high bar back squatting. So it'll be the first time putting them back in for quite a while. I'm curious to see how form will be affected by not having squatted for some time, and then how the camber of that SS Yoke bar will transfer over to how my back performs in the regular barbell back squat. You'll know that I have been dealing with shoulder issues in the past, and that was one of the biggest reasons as to why I stopped doing the low bar back squat, just because when I couple that with the bench press, it did aggravate that shoulder joint up a significant amount, manifested itself in like bicep pain in the bench press, and then just overall shoulder soreness just in everyday life. So having taken those out for the last 14 weeks has meant no real shoulder pain, injury type sensations coming out. So I've been really stoked with that, but we'll see how it goes in the next couple of months where I do introduce that back squat. Again, what's nice with the hypertrophy program is that we are playing around with light to moderate loads, but significantly higher rep ranges. And I haven't done that in quite a while. I've been mainly focusing in the previous years with just low rep heavy weight training. So we'll see if that same pain experience comes back with the lighter loads and the higher reps. So only time will tell. So what I'll do is I'll throw over to some training footage over last week and we'll see what all these new movements are. So opening up with the return of the low bar back squat, I was curious to find out how my form looked with the back squat after around 3 months of only squatting with the SS Yoke barbell. And I actually don't think there was that much deterioration from this lack of exposure. I did have to pause after 2 reps to catch my breath, but we did hit that target rep count of 9 this week. So notice I am using a new pair of knee sleeves. These are the X sleeves over at markbell.com. This will be the first time I'm actually using them, so stay tuned for a couple of months where I'll leave a review after some heavy usage of them. But in the meantime, I will leave a link in the description below so you can grab a pair for yourself. There's a coupon code, so you'll save $10 off of your first order of $50. Be sure to check them out. They do provide a bit more mechanical assistance than the Reband neoprene 7mm sleeves that I've been currently using, or that I've been using in the past. So it's kind of a different experience. I would say it's more akin to a light knee wrap. So you're getting a lot more structural support and elastic energy in the squat. So a little bit of acclimatizing too, but I did use them last week with some really light weights. Now that the weight's a little bit heavy, you kind of notice the energy kicking in there. So I think it'll be interesting to see how these sleeves help in the coming months of squatting. So the placement of the barbell on my back did feel a little weird at first, but that was to be expected. I did throw some chalk on the back of my shirt just to help with that grip from slipping. That knurling, you can still feel the knurling on the Rogo higher power bar through the shirt there, but I mean, that's a good thing because it means the barbell really doesn't slip that much. You'll notice that my back actually becomes a little bit more vertical at the start of the ascent, which I think is a good thing, and that's kind of the transfer through from that SS Yoke Barbell, fighting that forward camber of the weights. Towards the end here, you'll see that my fatigue does kick in, and the hips do start to rise slightly faster than the upper back, which again, we'll have to work on in the coming months. We move on to now the deficit deadlift. I like the 2-inch deficit deadlift as an accessory movement. I feel that it does help with the start of a regular deadlift just by extending that range of motion. We're also able to increase some time under tension, which should have some synergistic carryover to building muscle without necessarily having to beat up the body with heavier weights, kind of reduce that overall systemic stress on the body. Again, I do like it as an option to mitigate stress over the course of the week. And for like most accessory lifts, another way to mitigate that stress is that I don't use a lifting belt for most of the accessory movements if I can help it. I will use lifting straps just to help with that grip. Moving on to the push press, I reintroduced the push press after about a 6-week break. I do enjoy it as an overloaded overhead press movement just because of that leg drive component to the lift. I do think it helps with developing a stronger core for the purpose of a strict press, because you absolutely have to have a good brace for this. When you don't have a good brace, that transfer of power from your legs to the barbell is lost in quite a severe back arch, which you'll feel on poor reps there, and you just won't be able to fire up as quickly. And we contrast this over to the overhead press, the strict overhead press, where I've tried to minimize any layback and any hip drive from the lift in order just to build that foundational strength in my shoulders. And being a hypertrophy phase, we do want to focus on building some shoulder strength, not necessarily training the movement. We're kind of training the movement to train the shoulders here. You will see significant shaking in the hips and midsection, which you'll see in a more pronounced arch in the lower back during the press as the sets go on. So something to work on in the future. And here we have the low incline bench press. This will be the only somewhat horizontal pushing movement I've included in this phase of training. And this is because I really did want to develop that overhead press. So the horizontal press or bench press is going to take an extreme back seat to pretty much all the other movements for the next 6 weeks. And I think that's going to be a good way to focus and prioritize that overhead press without fatiguing it too much. One of the movements that did stick around since the start of the programming has been the front squat, and that's because amongst all the other lifts, I have wanted to bring this lift up specifically, just because I do think it is lagging, especially when compared with the back squat. I think the front squat is a great movement for building quad strength as well as ab and back strength, since you're really fighting the weight pulling you forward. I've been successful in the recent weeks of focusing on the front squat position for that barbell there. As I'm getting more and more exposure to the position, my body, I think, is adapting, and there's far less pain in the wrists, and the front rack itself, the position does feel very solid, a lot more solid than it did 16 or so weeks ago. And that's definitely coming through here with a bit more stability in the front rack, and as well as driving up some speed here to get through the lift. And here we're wrapping up the week with deadlifts, another movement that has stayed consistent in the program. I personally find that sumo deadlifting to be a little bothersome in my hips, especially when we combine that with some moderate to heavy squatting. I think those two movements combined together kind of dig into the hips a little bit too much for me personally. I do enjoy the sumo deadlift as a movement when it doesn't aggravate the hips, so I'll probably have to, if I do want to do the sumo, do a light sumo and a heavy squat, or a heavy squat and a light sumo, or something along those lines. I've been noticing a tendency for my weight to shift forward onto my toes during this conventional deadlift. So recently my cue has been to focus on staying in my heels in order to overcorrect so that the weight stays more balanced in my foot. And that's one thing you'll have to do with your own training, is these cues are there to kind of overcorrect the movement so that it brings you back to that neutral balance. So if you have your weight shifting onto your heels, think of putting the weight onto your toes, and in that middle ground there, you'll find the balance right in that middle of the foot. So that'll wrap up week 8 of training. Again, a lot of cool new movements that I haven't done in quite a while. I'm excited to see how that progress tracks. Again, the 3 days a week training frequency is something new as well. I'm introducing for this training phase, just to play around with a bit more recovery and see how that goes along. So be sure to subscribe to the playlist so you don't miss out on future episodes, as well as that final overall rating and review of the program. Thanks for watching. This has been Selin from Wynn Strength, and remember, a better life through strength.